In this lecture, we'll explore the first element of the DMAIC model, define. Remember, you can't make something better unless you define it. Fortunately, we have a number of tools and techniques that can help us with this task. I've found that using data and a team approach are two excellent ways to define an activity, process, or a problem. When you use data, you eliminate uncertainty and confusion. One of my pet peeves when it comes to defining something is the phrase more or less. If I ask a quality engineer about the dimensions of a part and she tells me it's 28 centimeters more or less, that's not good enough. But if she tells me it's 28 centimeters exactly, I feel much better. Also, when you define a problem with input from team members, the quality of the information and team member buy-in is much greater. We'll get started today by examining the basic Six Sigma metrics: defects per unit, DPU, defects per million opportunities, DPMO, yield, and rolled throughput yield, RTY. Next, we'll investigate a few team techniques to help define conditions and situations: brainstorming, brainwriting, nominal group technique, and affinity diagrams. We'll conclude the lesson by seeing how Pareto charts and critical to quality, CTQ, relate to process and problem definition. We have a lot to cover, so we better get going. I wouldn't be surprised if all of you have participated in brainstorming at some point in your life. But I wonder if you called brainstorming what if it was the real thing. I find that participants violate brainstorming rules more often than any other tool. People use the word brainstorm to mean many different things. Most often they use it to mean, let's have a discussion. Well, it's not a discussion. In fact, if you have a discussion during your brainstorming session, you're breaking the rules. Brainstorming is extremely easy to understand. I believe it has the capability of providing perhaps the greatest return on investment of any tool. It's so easy to use that even a 10-year-old can understand the rules in about 5 minutes. And when used properly, the results are amazing. It's such a pity that most people don't play by the rules. You may be familiar with the purpose of brainstorming and also its rules. And if you're like most of us, you probably have unknowingly broken the rules at one time or another. It takes a great deal of restraint and discipline to stick to the rules. It's human nature to want to spontaneously speak out when you don't agree with someone's statement. Brainstorming has one simple purpose: generate as many ideas as possible about a particular topic. That's it. Simple and to the point. As part of the DMAIC structure, brainstorming's ideas create clarity and consensus for process definition. You can use any technique as long as they're legal and moral. Let's review the rules of brainstorming. I'll list them in order of importance and frequency of violation. The first one is don't discuss brainstorming ideas. Before you jump to the wrong conclusion, you can discuss ideas, but only after the brainstorming session concludes. This is always a problem. Even though a facilitator or team leader posts and reviews rules right before the brainstorming session begins, participants usually violate this rule within a few minutes. Discussions often go off on a tangent, as when someone says, "That reminds me of a story." This can lead to a violation of the second rule: don't criticize brainstorming ideas. Criticism comes in many forms. The most common is a rude comment. More subtle forms are body language, such as rolling of the eyes or shaking the head from left to right. When participants begin to evaluate ideas during the early stages of brainstorming, it often short-circuits idea generation. Don't allow this to happen. The facilitator or team leader needs to enforce this rule. I know that this can be difficult, especially if the facilitator's boss is the person doing all the criticizing. The third rule is the scribe must record brainstorming ideas exactly as stated. I've seen this rule violated quite often. For some reason, scribes like to recompose participants' ideas. This is one part of brainstorming that does allow for dialogue. For example, one participant may offer this idea: don't let him do it anymore. This idea is too general and vague. We don't know the identity of him, nor do we know what it is. It is perfectly acceptable for a scribe to ask, could you please say that in a more descriptive way? Or, when you say him and it, what exactly are you referring to? I need to know so I can record your idea exactly as you intend. The scribe must be constructive when probing in this manner. He or she must not appear to be condescending or to give off the indication that the participant is dumb. If someone gives an idea that has already been used, the scribe still needs to record it because this may be the beginning of a number of new ideas. If the scribe doesn't record the idea, the participant may not give any other ideas because he or she is discouraged. The fourth rule is encourage participants to give outrageous ideas. Crazy suggestions often lead to an excellent breakthrough idea. It doesn't pay to be stodgy during a brainstorming session. The fifth rule is ask participants to build on other people's ideas. All ideas become public domain during brainstorming. Despite comments such as, that's my idea, no one owns ideas during a brainstorming session. The sixth rule is build enthusiasm and encourage everyone to participate. Don't hesitate to solicit ideas from team members. The demeanor of the facilitator or team leader plays a big role in creating positive brainstorming energy. The seventh rule is make sure that the scribe can keep up with the flow of ideas. You may want to consider using two scribes to record all participants' inputs. The eighth rule is use stick-on flip chart paper and post on the wall as you go along for everyone to see. The ninth rule, use silence effectively. Sometimes silence indicates that the group is thinking. Let them think, especially in the early stages. After a while, silence may indicate that there are no more ideas. The 10th rule is read ideas on the flip chart paper. Whenever I do this, I always elicit more ideas. I believe this has something to do with the way that people process stimuli, verbal versus visual. These are the 10 brainstorming rules that I use. I hope you can successfully apply them. The setting for the next two techniques is different than brainstorming. They are a structured form of producing ideas as they give each person a chance to equally participate. The techniques permit numerous inputs from a variety of people, many who would not participate in a traditional brainstorming process. Brainwriting is a way to increase group participation. It is especially useful when one or more members tend to monopolize the conversation or when people are reluctant to participate. To use brainstorming, a facilitator first states the topic. Next, each participant takes a blank sheet of paper and writes down a few ideas, usually between 3 and 6. Participants pass their papers to team members who add their own ideas. Participants then use another blank sheet of paper to write more ideas while their original sheets circulate among the group. After a period of time, participants will run out of ideas. The facilitator collects all the sheets and records the ideas on flip chart paper. The rules for brainwriting are the following. Number 1, silence is golden. No discussion or criticism is allowed. And number 2, Responses must be legible. Let's move on to the next technique, nominal group technique, NGT. Here's how the nominal group technique works. After a facilitator introduces a topic, participants list as many ideas as they can, again, using blank sheets of paper. Eventually, each participant will run out of ideas and then wait while others finish. Once all participants are done, the facilitator asks each person to share one idea, which he records on flip chart paper. This process continues until there are no more ideas to record. It is permissible for participants to offer ideas that they didn't write on their sheets of paper. Remember, the objective is to generate as many ideas as possible, regardless of their origin. As a structured form that combines brainstorming and brainwriting, NGT produces many ideas and solutions in a short period of time. It focuses on problems, opens up the lines of communication, ensures participation, and builds consensus and commitment. Let's look at the last brainstorming variant, affinity diagrams. You may know the process to create affinity diagrams as the sticky note method because it uses Post-it notes, but it also can use index cards and tape. Affinity diagrams help define problems by organizing ideas according to categories you create based on the relationships of one idea to another. Affinity diagrams are so powerful that they are included as one of the 7 management and planning tools, which includes such outstanding tools as network diagrams and tree diagrams, both used to designate process flows and key relationships. This tool is particularly useful when ideas are pretty scattered and there is a lack of agreement on defining a topic. Affinity diagrams are also good for large or complex situations. After you introduce a topic, each participant lists a single idea on the note paper or card. As with the other brainstorming methods, you need to do this in silence. I suggest you use fine or medium tip markers to create maximum legibility. This part of the technique is identical to NGT, except you use note papers instead of a standard sheet of paper. Once participants run out of ideas, they take their cards or notes to a wall or table and organize them in logical clusters. For example, let's assume that our topic is defining a new product introduction process. Some of our clusters could be data requirements, customer inputs, and legal and regulatory approval. Make sure there's still no talking. Don't be reluctant to move cards or notes as necessary. Remember, once a participant gives an idea, it becomes property of the brainstorming process. Anyone can move any note at any time. Eventually, when you believe that all cards are in their correct cluster, encourage participants to talk. It's time to reconsider some of the locations of notes and also to develop headings for the logical clusters. After your group is satisfied with the results, record the ideas for further discussion. So far, we've talked about generating ideas, but what do you do with them? The objective of reviewing brainstorming ideas is to identify all options so that all participants understand them and can play a role in prioritizing and applying them. Regardless of what technique you use, your ideas are of little value if you don't discuss them meaningfully and apply the ones that everyone agrees with. Pursue general acceptance among your group. As you press on for acceptance of ideas, strive for consensus. Shortly after you finish brainstorming, allow your ideas to incubate. After a while, get the group back together for reviewing, clarifying, deleting, editing, and combining ideas. Apply filters to your list of ideas to identify issues that don't pertain to what you're trying to define. Before we wrap things up, let's examine 2 more tools to help define processes or problems. Pareto charts are a graphical representation of what is vital and what is trivial. I need to clarify that just because something is vital doesn't mean it's expensive. I remember an inexpensive part that I used to buy that my supplier couldn't make half the time. I ended up moving it from the trivial to the vital category. The best way to learn how to use Pareto charts is to walk through an example. Suppose that I'm trying to get a handle on why a medical device is generating so many customer complaints. The marketing department is at their wits' end and they're almost ready to discontinue the product. I decide to use a Pareto chart to define the problem. The first thing I do is to record a list of customer complaints for the latest week. There's quite a few of them, as you can see in the chart at the left. I then take the following steps. I then sort the data in descending order of incidents that you can see in the middle of this slide. Late deliveries, there's 55 incidents. They represent 43.7% of the total. Then damaged packaging is second at 43. I add those to 55 and divide by the total and come up with a 77.8% of the total and just continue with the rest of the categories. Then to the right, I construct a chart using the incidence of the problem as the left y-axis, the cumulative probability as the right y-axis, and the label of the problem as the x-axis. Then I create a vertical bar for the largest incidence problem category and also a point at the top of the bar. I then did the same thing for the second largest incidence problem, and then I connected the 2 points to form the beginning of a line. I then proceed until all variables are plotted in the chart and I interpret the data. You can see that late deliveries and damaged packaging make up the 2 largest categories. In fact, these 2 problems represent 25% of the total line items, 2 out of 8, and comprise about 78% of the total complaints. Therefore, the largest amount of corrective action needs to be placed on these 2 areas. I prepare a table of the complaint reasons and take it, along with my Pareto chart, to the shipping supervisor. It appears that the shipping department can help reduce these complaints and make the folks in marketing happy. Let's move on to our final topic, critical to quality, CTQ. In our previous example about the medical device, it would have been helpful to define specifically what customers wanted. In Six Sigma terminology, this is referred to as critical to quality or key process output variables, KPOVs. Examples are the flatness of a table, the diameter of a pipe, or the power of a generator. CTQ relates to the design or characteristics of a physical product or an attribute of service. General Electric, GE, a Six Sigma pioneer, advocates that when using CTQ, only measure what's important. It's interesting to note that at GE, they refer to CTQ as Y. It must be some type of secret code. An easy way to get started with CTQ is by using a critical to quality tree that you see at the bottom of the slide. This diagram allows you to define customer needs by moving what they want in a vague way to something specific. Suppose that I have an opportunity to provide Six Sigma training to a manufacturing firm in my local area. I create the beginnings of my CTQ tree by listing the customer's needs, Six Sigma training. Next, I break down my customer's need into its basic requirements. There are 3 requirements: setting the training schedule, choosing the participants, and developing the curriculum. I then break down my CTQ tree to the next level of detail by adding more information to the branches attached to my basic requirements. So now you can see client availability, trainer availability, client decides about the participants, DMAIC, project management, and lean thinking. I could continue on to greater levels of specificity, but I think you get the general idea. Once I complete my CTQ tree, I need to verify all requirements with my customer. This concludes the lecture for today. I hope that you found it interesting and also useful.